This episode is brought to you by North Texas Honda Dealers. North Texas Honda Dealers, they're here to help.
He has time, launches it to the end zone. Touchdown! Terrence Williams!
The throw goes to the right side for Crabtree. It's caught. He he's going down, Red Raider.
Bussey up the 10. Bussey up the right sideline. Yockey's got to go. He's tackled. Sam Houston wins it. The Bearcats capture their first FCS championship.
Hello, welcome to the Republic of Football Week 1 edition. I'm your host, the college editor here, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Ishmael Johnson here, sitting next to me is Carter Yates, in for his first Week 1.
It's a different type of energy in the office.
Yeah.
Everyone's putting their head down and going to work because it's like, look, I know being a college coach is tough,
Sure.
but you've got one game to prepare for.
You
We're
gotta
preparing for
You
13
got to think about the writers sometimes.
over here.
Yeah.
It's really tough what we're doing right now.
We've been writing a lot. Sure, they've been in the sun, right? Sure, they've been practicing a lot, right? Game planning.
Yeah,
We've
but
been typing away.
I've been hunkered down typing.
We've been typing for a long time, and that can get pretty strenuous, right? I'm not one to differentiate calories burned, whether you're running in 100-degree weather, doing wind sprints, or sitting at your computer. You're both burning calories. Don't ask how many, right? Don't compare how many calories, but we're both burning calories in many ways. So thank you for hanging with us and sticking with us through the off season, because we're finally here. It's not week 0. It's not preseason. It's not start of fall camp. We got actual live football games going on. Of course, if you're a high school fan, you've had a week or so to kind of enjoy that. But for us, we're finally here. The reason why you can hear us, of course, is our very own producer, everyone's favorite Malpal, Mallory Hartley. How, Mallory?
Hi.
How are you?
How's it going?
Are you ready
Yes. I'm very excited.
For everything?
I can't wait for everything.
for the chaos?
For the chaos. Yeah, I did. Shmael, okay, so I quoted our
Okay.
tweet on Twitter,
Sure.
you know, where it has our broadcast.
Yes.
And I said one like and Ish will let me preview Michigan State versus Central Michigan. And I already have 2 likes. So,
Well, it wasn't a very high bar you
was-
set there.
well, that's the point because
Anyway,
I don't think anyone wants to hear me talk about that game.
I will give you, like last year, I will give
10
you
seconds.
a chance to talk about them sometime this season.
Okay, correct. when they play Rutgers.
Probably when they play Rutgers.
When they play Rutgers.
Who knows? Maybe a little before that. On today's show, though, if you're not familiar with how we do it during the season, we will be previewing every single Texas team that plays in the state this weekend. Luckily, there are some teams playing each other, so we'll be, it won't be as we're not doing 13 games, put it that way. We have some interesting matchups, and then before that, though, we will give Mike Craven a call, our senior college writer, to talk about TCU and Colorado. That's where he'll be this weekend. He'll be in Fort Worth. And there's a lot of hype surrounding that game just in general. Deion, you got the reigning runner-ups, national title runner-ups in TCU, of course. And there's a lot of storylines going into that game. By the way, we just put out our number 3 50 most important college players in Texas. Josh Newton, there's a little bit of relation there for TCU was our number 3. We have number 2 and number 1 coming up tomorrow and Friday. And a little bit of a plug for Mike Craven's story on Baylor. Baylor's defensive coordinator, Matt Powledge, will be calling his first defensive game this weekend against Texas State. The last time he was in high school at Huntsville High School calling the Powder Puff game, juniors versus seniors. So go check out a story on that. It's really cool. And then, of course, he has a story on Frank Harris. Carter will have a feature dropping on North Texas. I'll just put it that way as a little tease. Probably tomorrow, Thursday, if you're listening to this on Wednesday. So, yeah, there will be a nice little story there on North Texas for all you UNT fans. All right. So let's get into – we have a little bit of a preface because we haven't had a chance to talk about the Power Poll. It's been a little while since we've been on. We did have a game yesterday, or not yesterday, last weekend, I should say. UTEP once again played on week 0. Unfortunately, they lost 17-14 to Jacksonville State. And so the Power Poll, Mallory, if you will throw this up whenever you can for our viewers. Power Poll came out last weekend before that game, and as you see, UTEP is number 11 right there. They will, depending on what happens with Sam Houston and Texas State, they will either stay the same or drop. They're probably not going to rise after their loss this past weekend. But let's talk a little bit about the Power Poll before we get into UTEP's game. All right, so Texas, as we've said all offseason, enters into the season as the number 1 team in the state according to our Power Poll. Carter, as an alum, How nervous does that make you?
Scale of 1 to 10, I'd say 8.
8. Okay.
Because now here's the thing about Texas is, one, they usually fall short of where they're ranked preseason wise.
Sure.
But then you got to factor in this year that they will get everyone's best punch, because this is the last year they'll be playing most of these Big 12 teams for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And you already saw with Dana Holgerson what he said on his fan radio show.
What Brett Yormark said about
what Brett Yormark, the commissioner, said. He's openly rooting for Texas Tech, which, look, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sitting here like this is egregious that he's saying this. I mean, sure, you want to be a little more vanilla, I would think. But, yeah, I mean, in a normal year, I'd be nervous. Now that it's Texas' last year in the Big 12 with the target squarely on their back, yeah, I think I'm pretty nervous.
Yeah, I'm wondering, we look at this power poll, and of course there are some teams that are ranked probably in the bottom half, right? Like a UNT, I'll say Texas State, Sam Houston. I'll throw Rice in there as well. Or Baylor as well. That are kind of like mysteries, right? They're kind of like, we just got to kind of put them there because they weren't great last year. But obviously UNT and Texas State made some changes to their coaching staff, so we don't know really what they are, but kind of by default they got to be here. I'm kind of intrigued. I don't know. I think that there's room for a lot of movement, particularly in the bottom half. I would not be shocked if there are more teams in the bottom half finishing in the top half than maybe maybe like top teams, aside from maybe a Texas, staying in the top half the whole season, in my opinion. I don't know. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I think when you look at like the top 4 teams right there, those are all programs right now who I think have a very high probability of falling. You know, it's not like one of these where any of those top 4 teams are extremely consistent, right? 2 years ago, TCU was 5-7. The last year with Gary Patterson, a lot of question marks coming in. This year with a new quarterback, having lost 5 members of the All Big 12 team. Texas Tech, I mean, I said it the last time we talked about this power poll, but you would think that Texas Tech, based on the positive vibes around that program, won like 12 games a year ago instead of going 8-5.
Yeah.
So they could be a little bit overrated. And then Texas A&M, I mean, the wheels absolutely fell off the bus last season, and they're placed at 4 right now just because of how talented they really are. But, I mean, I think Texas A&M, I think they're going to have a better year than finishing 4th, but I'm not going to bank on Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino just having a seamless marriage here in year 1.
Sure.
So you said, okay, they're going to finish better in 4th. Where do you think they're going to finish?
I think they're going to finish
ahead
either
of Tech?
1 or 2. I think Texas
Really?
A&M will
Okay.
finish ahead of Tech by the end of this year.
Okay.
I think they'll finish ahead of Tech and ahead of TCU. If Texas plays to their potential, they're going to finish 1. But Texas playing to their potential is about the biggest scenario you can make.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's fair. All right, let's talk a little bit about UTEP before we go on to this week's games. UTEP lost to Jacksonville State. I mentioned Jacksonville State's debut in the FBS. I guess technically their debut in Conference USA as well. UTEP played. It was in Jacksonville. And yeah, Carter, how much of this game did you watch? Because I watched most of it, and I was kind of bored through most of it because it just felt like to UTEP. The play calling was frustrating. I get it. Gavin Hardison is who he is, I think, is kind of what I came away from as well. And then they insisted on running the ball a lot, and they really can't run the ball.
Well, they're running the ball a lot, and you had a tweet about it, but you're going to be 3rd and 5 at midfield, and you're going to run the ball.
The situations were very confusing, right? Because it was like at the end of the game, they needed short yardage, and they threw the ball. But the whole game, I thought they should be more a vertical team because I think that's what Gavin Hardison's strength is. But they insist on running the ball. So it was like the time they chose to throw the ball. I don't think it was a bad call. I think Hardison just missed the throw. But in that scenario, if you would have asked me at the beginning of the game, I would have been like, yeah, no, if they have short yardage to go late, they probably try to run the ball.
3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, they threw the ball. And look, the slot wide receiver was open on that interception. So, I mean, yeah, it was.
I think Hardison said the same thing, too. I think Colin Deaver out there asked him in practice this week, and he was like, yeah, it was a good throw or a good call. I just missed the throw.
Yeah, and I don't think that Hardison had really good chemistry at all with his tight end and like in the short passing game.
Sure.
I mean, there was times where it'd be 3rd and 8, and he threw short of the sticks, and his tight end would fall down coming out of the break or something like that. And I made the comparison kind of tongue in cheek, but it's almost like Gavin Hardison has a little bit of Josh Allen in him, where like when he uncorks the ball,
he has
it looks pretty.
Yeah, he has an arm.
Like he can throw the deep ball very well. You saw the play to Kelly Akari in the first drive of the game where it was a perfect throw, and Akari made a great effort. It was just like a really hard pass to complete. Sure. And then they hooked up later for a touchdown. But Hardison really struggles with like the 10 to 15-yard throws. So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit of like, I think when he just doesn't think about it and really uncorks it, he's got one of the better arms in the state. But it's just that type of, he's got to be a little more consistent, and it's hard to be sitting here saying we need him to be more consistent when he's in his 6th year.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to hear more on this game, I believe Colin Deaver on the Mind Shaft, also on this podcast feed, did a really good job of breaking it down on their podcast. Craven also had a piece after the game as well. So before we get Mike Craven on the phone to talk about TCU versus Colorado in their home opener, I do want to tell you a little bit about our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is, with a new season, they're going to start rolling out their brand new collaborations weekly. They're going to be updating a lot of their apparel. For those of you that do not know, Home Field Apparel is probably the number one, in my opinion, the number one vintage brand clothing apparel for college football and college football fans. I mean, you can go through, I believe they have over 150 colleges to choose from, with constantly adding more as the season goes along. For Texas programs in particular, TCU, we'll talk about them in a bit. They just updated their TCU package. It looks fantastic. A lot of vintage stuff, a lot of baseball stuff as well, not just football. If you're a college football fan, please use promo code DCTF for 15% off your first time purchase at Home Field Apparel. Doesn't have to be Texas schools. It could be any school you want, but of course we're going to pump up the Texas schools. If you want to support any of the other shows on this network, they each have their own promo codes. Go listen, go follow them on social. You'll find out their promo codes as well. Pass it around to your friends. Again, 15% off your first time purchase using promo code DCTF. All right, we are here with Mike Craven, who's getting ready to head up to Fort Worth this weekend to take a look at Deion's Colorado Buffaloes taking on Sonny Dykes' TCU Horned Frogs. And I guess I'm just going to start off right with it. All right, Mallory, I believe I'm going to do your role for for this one game only.
That's okay.
11 a.m. kick Saturday at 2 on Fox. TCU minus 20.5. I know this is a special situation, Craven, but when's the last time you saw a non-Bama or Georgia team, Power 5 team, open up against another Power 5 team as a 20-plus point favorite?
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but TCU obviously coming off a 12-0 record last year in the national championship game. Colorado being so bad, and there's just so much unknown about the Buffaloes. I mean, 50-plus players brought in for the transfer portal. Deion didn't bring along his offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator from Jackson State. So it's not you can go back and just watch that film and see what they're going to do. And so, they have a lot of raw talent. Most of it's at, kind of the skill positions. So we'll see how they hold up in the trenches. But that feels about right. Honestly, I think I lean towards taking TCU and giving the points.
Yeah, I'm curious when it comes to, because there's people can talk about Deion's kind of ties to the state, and there's another story there, right? Obviously, he has very, let's just say, polarizing ties when you just look up Prime Prep if you want more info on that. But there's also I think there's some motivation on Deion's side as well, because if I'm not mistaken, he wanted the TCU job, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, he interviewed for it,
yeah,
for sure, and was one of the finalists. I mean, depending on who you talk to,
sure.
it was Sonny Dykes or Deion, right? You go with the established name who's coached a lot, who's done it at DFW, or you go with that big kind of home run splash hire. And TCU aired on the experience side, and I think that they're happy with their decision. But this took on bigger stakes than what it even had, just a month ago when Colorado got announced to the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Because you always had to deal with, like, okay, if Deion gets this thing rolling, he's going to recruit in the state of Texas pretty well.
Sure.
Well, if you add him to being a Big 12 school where he's going to play in the state against Tech or TCU or Waco or Houston at least once a year, probably twice a year, get trips into the state. Now, all of a sudden, you're creating a pretty big force if you lose to them. And so it's a big one for Sonny Dykes. And the thing I'm most interested about is how coaches kind of treat Deion. And if coaches get an opportunity to blow him out, are they going to, because he's so aggressive in the transfer portal, that they're trying to show their locker room like, hey, if they come around in December or whatever, we beat them by 40, you don't want to go over there. And so it'll be fascinating to see how this works for Deion in 2023.
Now, Craven, I totally understand the TCU winning by over 20.5 call that you made, but am I crazy for thinking that Colorado may jump out to a bit of an early lead? I mean, they have 86 new players, basically 10 scholarship players that return from last year's team. You have no idea what you're going to get with new offensive defensive coordinators. And I think Colorado kind of sneaky has some DFW fans around the area that will probably be going to this game.
There's no sneaky. He has a
he's got to train with them.
I'll shy away from a certain phrase, but he has a group that's really willing to ride and die for him.
So I'm not crazy, right?
No, I mean, if you wanted to sprinkle a little money on Colorado in the first quarter, I wouldn't blame you, because you never know what's going to happen. And I think that's true everywhere for week one. Like, you just don't know. A lot of these rosters and so many new coaches and different coordinators, and, they're going to call crazy plays. Like, Colorado's got nothing to lose. They're on the road against a team that just played for the national championship. And Deion Sanders has a team, as you mentioned, with 75 new scholarship players and a two deep that is unrecognizable from the Colorado team last year. Like, Sonny and the staff aren't even watching Colorado tape from last year because, what's the point? And so, yeah, I guess they could come out and catch them off guard. I think if you're TCU, you just figure that your offensive line and defensive line and just the depth on a really hot day. This is 11 a.m. kickoff in Fort Worth. You just hope that stuff kind of overrides any trickiness or whatever that Colorado can pull out. Just weather that storm and then get into a fist fight, and you probably got bigger ones than they do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Colorado has been practicing in Boulder, and that's not Texas. And so very much I see this as more of a third, fourth quarter game as being the one that decides it, because like Craven mentioned, the two deep is going to be okay. You kind of recognize some of these names, not necessarily from Colorado, but that's where your Alt McCaskills are going to be, your Shadur Sanders, right? Things like that. But then you start getting to third, fourth quarter where you're really starting to have to rotate. And then you start getting into the guys who are playing a little too long because they don't want to play the walk-ons, or the guys that probably aren't up to snuff, or they're forced to rotate some of those guys who maybe aren't the top line that are going to be playing there theoretically in another year or two. And that's when I think TCU really gets going. That early fourth quarter spot, when you start really getting the peak of the day, it's going to be like 2 p.m. at that point, heat-wise. And then you also get into Colorado maybe having to play a third stringer every once in a while on the defensive line. It's like, okay, I think the top line talent for Colorado, you look at them and you see, okay, that's a lower Power 5, upper G5 talent type of person, right? But then you start looking at the rest, and it's like, that's when you start getting shaky. That's when you start seeing the tweets of why Shadur Sanders hasn't thrown a pick in practice, right? It's because look who he's practicing against. So do you kind of see it unfolding in that way, Craven? Because, of course, as we know, despite a lot of the answers we have on TCU, we've said it multiple times, there's still some players that we got to see from them too. Like some guys we always talk about Chandler Morris, but in the backfield at wide receiver, there's still some question marks there too.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at TCU's two deep, out of those 44, I would say about 30 to 32 of them are going into year two in Sonny Dykes' system. Maybe didn't play starring roles last year, but played some football, or at least were on that team and know Joe Gillespie on defense and kind of know some of the offensive philosophy stuff. I mean, even with the new offensive coordinator, they're going to do a lot of the similar stuff, right? Like, it's still – there's a reason that he went out and hired Kendall, and that's because he thought it would kind of keep the offense pretty similar to what it was. And so, for me, I mean, if you're TCU, you just figure that the first 30 snaps, maybe they can hang with you a little bit. They have some talented players, especially if we looked at this thing like a 7-on-7 game. They're probably as talented in the front line as TCU is, but they do not have the offensive line, and they do not have the defensive line to last for 80, 90 plays on each side of the ball in the heat against TCU team that is going into year two with all their guys, where, with Colorado, it's literally starting from scratch. And that's a hard thing to do, right? Like, it's a hard thing to build a program in one off season, especially when you're bringing in 70 new dudes.
I know we're a Texas-centric podcast, Craven, but I'm really interested what your opinion is on Colorado this year, especially considering that 3.5 win total I think they have. Because I feel like everyone who's really mad at Deion for how he's gone about this business is, 1, media members, 2, opposing coaches. It feels like, look, the players that he made go in the transfer portal can be mad, but they're not there anymore. These are all his guys that he's brought in. The fans seem to be extremely bought in to what Deion's doing at Colorado. So it just feels like everyone who's kind of icky about this situation is all the outsiders. So what is your opinion on Colorado this year as a team?
Yeah, I mean, I think he just said the quiet part out loud too often. Like, we enjoyed these kind of dealings to happen with a smile and a little bit of go have another chance somewhere. Like, he was pretty straightforward of like, I'm going to cut a bunch of you, and that's just not in the normal spirit of college athletics. Like, we're all adult enough to know that it happens, but usually not that way. So I think there was a lot of parents upset, a lot of coaches upset, a lot of players obviously upset who kind of were forced to either choose between playing football or, the life that they had built at their university that they had chosen over their other ones previous years. And so if you're inside Deion's circle, you're always going to enjoy the trappings of that success, right? Like he is a sensation. He is like marvelous at the marketing and being prime and building all that pub and taking care of his guys. The problem with Deion always has been, as soon as you're not one of those, like you're beyond nothing, and he's going to treat you as such. And that's just a hard way. You better be successful. Like, there are some guys that are those kind of dudes in this profession, but you better be really, really good at it, or you're just not going to get away with it. And Deion has always been really, really good at it as a player, as a coach, as whatever. So he's always gotten away with it. And we'll see if the latest thing can do that same trick.
Yep. All right, like I said, Saturday at 11 a.m. on Fox. Craven will be on site at TCU when they take on Colorado. Craven, safe travels up, man.
Appreciate you.
Yep. Bye. All righty. So, yeah, that's probably the most intriguing game this weekend, in my opinion, because it can go – I mean, I think it'll go one way, but there are many different ways it could get there. Let's put it that way.
Well, Colorado, when Deion came in, had a bunch of North Face luggage, and then Deion came in, he brought that Louis luggage.
Right,
so we're about to see the
That's
Louis
all you need
luggage.
to know, right?
Yeah. So we're about to see. I think what I think is going to happen is Colorado's going to jump out to a lead in the first quarter,
Sure, I
and
wouldn't be
then
shocked.
Yeah.
like what you're talking about in the heat, they don't have the reserves.
Yeah.
It's like the front lines, like Craven's talking about, the 7-on-7 teams, if you want to line those people up, of course, with Deion Sanders being the all-pro cornerback he got the great skill positions loaded. But the trenches I'm really concerned about, especially on TCU with Brandon Coleman and Andrew Coker. I think they are two linemen that are way above any caliber linemen that Colorado have.
Right.
So I think TCU will win this one, but I think it's going to get a little interesting.
No, I think
at
so
the very
too.
start.
I think so too. All right, Mallory, let's get into our other spotlight games of the week. Do you remember how to do this?
We'll see. Our second top matchup of week 1. Carter, you're going to be here. UTSA at Houston this Saturday, September 2nd at 6 p.m. You can watch it on FS1. UTSA coming in as 2-point favorites. How about the over-under set at 60? What are your thoughts going into this game? Because I was at last year's matchup, and the triple overtime loss for UTSA was just heartbreaking. In my opinion, I think they're out for revenge, and I think they're going to get it.
I am getting to this game extremely early. Like, when the parking lot opens up, I'm going to be there, like, camped outside the cones, like, to get in, because I really want to see what this tailgating scene looks like for Houston fans. So they've already sold more tickets for this game, Dana Holgorsen said in Monday press conference, than they have in any other previous game.
Wow.
Right? They have more season tickets. They have 10 games in the state of Texas, 7 of which are going to be at TD ECU Stadium. And this is why you go into the Big 12. You go for this bigger fan engagement. You know, they said Fan Day and Cage Rage were both hugely successful events. And there is so much air in this hot air balloon right now around Houston, and that can get sucked out right away with the loss to UTSA.
Oh, yeah.
It is just so weird that Houston is now a Power 5 team who is at home and favored to lose the game.
Right.
Like, this is something that I don't know how often this happens at all, and it just seems like this game has so much importance on it, and it's really hard to overstate how important getting a win here for Houston is.
I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong here, but UTSA coming into this game, I don't feel like they have any kind of chip on their shoulder. I feel like they're coming in and they're saying, hey, we want a revenge tour from last year.
Yeah.
But it feels like all of these implications on this game land on Houston's shoulder. Is that correct?
Yes. I don't know if UTSA has plays with that underdog chip on their shoulder much anymore. I think they just are good. Like,
Yeah.
they just think they're They're a solid team. They've had guys there for 3 years who have been playing under Traylor. I mean, they're one of the most experienced teams in college football. And Houston right now is a team that had a weird offseason. Like they had guys transfer out of the program after spring practice that the coaches were blindsided by. They're coming into now here as underdogs at home as a Power 5 school. I think Houston has everything to lose, and UTSA has everything to win.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's a really scary situation to be in right now.
I was gonna say, so you have UTSA, who's like Mallory mentioned, their only real like motivation in terms of like not just like going out to win the game is last year, right? They had a game that they controlled for the most part. They let it get away from them. Now, like you mentioned, there's no pressure on them, right?
No.
They're still the AAC team playing the Big 12 team. But now to them, they're like, well, we should have won last year. We can win this year, right? We can we can spoil their first game as a Big 12 program, things like that. My thing, and that's kind of why I'm probably leaning them but my thing is with UTSA, for the first time ever, they lost a guy to the transfer portal, right? In Zachary Franklin. Huge. That was one of their biggest strengths last year, is not only just Cephas, Franklin, and JT Clark, but all three of those guys, right? We don't know the status of JT Clark yet, right? I believe as of 10 days ago, I think it was Greg Luca. That's what I was looking up just now. Greg Luca at the San Antonio Express News says that his status is still up in the air for the game, right? Josh Cephas, of course, he had a eventful offseason. He had the DWI charge late. I think it was around bowl season, I think.
Yep.
So he's kind of like had to, I think on the depth chart, he's back as their number 2 or number 1, whatever you list him as. But he's had to work his way back kind of like to ingratiating himself with his team again, right?
Definitely a C- offseason.
Sure. Yeah, at the very least. But so for the first time in a while, and then of course, if you did not read Craven's story on Frank Harris, he had some issues, right? He had some obviously recovery issues with his knee that's given him trouble his whole career, even going back to San Antonio Clemens.
He didn't throw from the end of the season till July.
Right. Again, for those of you that have not seen this story, Frank Harris legitimately almost medically retired. Right. Like that is a thing that almost happened. Go check out Craven's story now on TexasFootball.com. He went into detail on it. Up until I think it was, I asked Craven, I was like, did he know around media day when we talked to him in person, he was going to play? He was like, yeah, it was like the week before. He basically met with us at media day. He finally realized he was going to play. So like for the first time that I can remember since like probably COVID, UTSA has had some real stuff to kind of go through. That's the only reason I'm hesitant on picking them outright, right?
Yeah.
But I do want to go with them because I do think after getting through all of that, they're like together. And it's like, okay, cool. We've been through it. We're done. The fire's over, right? Cephas had that issue with the DWI. Harris had that issue with his knee. Franklin leaving kind of, that was that thing. But we're all together and we're here ready to go, right?
I was going to say, they seem like the more put together team if we're comparing the
after
two right now.
Well, after all of that, they're still
right.
They seem okay.
Right. Well, and you got to remember too, both of these teams also have a lot to prove coming into the season in new conferences. UTSA moving up to the American, and then even more importantly, Houston moving up to the Big 12. Like they want to prove that they belong in the Big 12, and a good start is to beat Houston or UTSA at home.
And we do want to say that Donovan Smith was announced as a starter.
Yes.
I believe the last time we talked, there was some Lucas Coley talk there, but Dana, I think shortly after that episode, named Donovan Smith the starter for Houston. So again, I think Donovan Smith's fine.
Yep.
We'll see. And I end it there. Fine, period. Like I think he is fine.
I think I'm going to Zach. I think I'm going to go Houston in this one. The UTSA, I don't think this is going to be as strong of a team as UTSA has had in recent years. And I do think that Traylor is all in, but with all these rumors about him, maybe going to a next job here pretty soon, like I feel like the players don't have blinders on. Like I feel like that's kind of like it kind of feels like this is almost the last ride.
They're on social media. Yeah.
It feels like this is the last ride preemptively, and it just with Frank Harris not playing, with some of the offseason issues, the wide receiver room isn't going to be as strong. I'm going to go Houston this one, I think, but it's a toss-up.
Okay.
It is a toss-up. I'm going UTSA.
I'm going UTSA,
which is the best. Toss-up games are the best.
They are the best.
We'll
check back in on Sunday,
yes.
But let's move on to our last top matchup of Week 1, and that is Schmale, Texas State at Baylor this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on Big 12 Network or ESPN Plus. Baylor coming in as 28-point favorites. The over-under set at 60.5. Schmale. We were at this game last year. We were at a lot of games last year, but I was also at this game last year.
Yeah,
Texas State looked good in the first half. I'm not going to lie.
The first half. Different coaching
different
staff,
story
but
last second half. But,
They did they go in with no, they were down.
They were down, but
by like 10, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't much. They looked pretty good.
They looked pretty good. That was kind of the Ashton Hawkins breakout game as well. I think the line's right. I think they should be about what is it? What was it again? Let me see. It's
28. Yeah.
Based off of what we know about both teams, I think that's fine for now, right? Baylor, we expect a rebound year from them. Texas State, there's really not much you can expect, right? If it looks like it's going to be TJ Finley starting, but even then, if it's TJ Finley or Malik Hornsby, you have an unproven quarterback who's a pretty good athlete versus a guy who's kind of been a letdown as a Power 5 quarterback. So it's like we don't really know what to glean from it, and the rest of them are UIW transfers or kind of guys who have had various amounts of playing time elsewhere in terms of like, I believe Colorado's the only team in the country that's had more transfers than Texas State.
But Kenny has he announced that Finley's starting?
He hasn't.
Right? It's the
there's
big
still
or.
An or. What I'm gleaming from it is that Finley will start and then Malik Hornsby will kind of play as well. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. Well, I like how he has that or there though, because like we talked about 2 weeks ago on the show, two completely different styles of play.
Oh, 100%.
And that makes it really hard for Baylor to prepare. It's like, okay, when we're running scout team offense this week, one, we're going to have a 6'7" pure pocket passer.
Sure.
And two, we're going to have a track star who's going to tuck it and run if his first read isn't open right away.
Sure.
And that makes it really tough to prepare. And I think Colorado's a similar thing with Texas State. Is like I could see Texas State jumping out to a quick early lead because you just don't know what to expect if you're Baylor with all those transfers you have.
Yeah.
For me, I think Baylor will win this game, and two people I'm looking at. Keytron Jackson Jr. at wide receiver.
Yes.
He is supposed to be the number one guy, the deep threat that they didn't have last year. And that's part of the reason that the passing game was pretty pedestrian, right? It's because they lost Tyquan Thornton, and then Monterey Baldwin was injured often. Keytron Jackson is supposed to be the guy who he can go up and get the ball for Blake Shapen. And if he looks really good, then watch out for Baylor this upcoming year.
I would not be surprised if this played out similarly to TCU to Colorado, right? Because I like a lot of Texas State's first-level guys. Right, in terms of who they brought in. I think there's not as like they don't have a Alton McCaskill type of guy like Colorado did, but transfer-wise, they either proved themselves at UIW or they were in the rotation elsewhere, right? So I think top-line starters, decent. Where Baylor's going to be able to dominate and establish themselves in the trenches and then, as you mentioned, out wide is when Texas State starts having to rotate, because then you start getting into maybe the guys at Texas State that probably weren't that great last year, or maybe some transfers who probably aren't ready to see that kind of playing time yet, versus Baylor, who admittedly they've been together for a while. This team's been together for a while and only recently started to go in the transfer portal. So they won't, like, you bring in a Mike Smith who brings in something you need, but you're not relying on for depth and bringing in a bunch of new guys. These are guys that have been under Aranda, played under this system for a while. I do like the wide receivers that you mentioned. I do also want to give a shout out to Josh Cameron as well, because he was somebody who I believe was a PWO last year.
Yep.
Or the year before. I can't remember when it was his first year. But regardless.
He was, yeah.
Was he? Yeah.
He was.
And because he was on the Cedar Park, the last Cedar Park state final team.
Yeah, and he earned a scholarship, yeah.
And he was fantastic out of nowhere. And all of a sudden, when I saw that he was going to be, I think he ended up not going to media day, but he was on the media day list initially. I was like, wow, they really like a lot, so he's obviously made some strides for them. I believe he's listed as the number 2 or number 3, depending on how you see Monterey Baldwin on the depth chart. And so I do think they have depth now, not just a Keytron Jackson, who probably is on the cusp of being that premier guy, but they have 2 other guys in addition to him to now be relied on, and that kind of puts a lot on Blake Shapen's plate. Right, because this is a big year for him. Obviously, he has competition now. Sawyer Robertson is a former SEC quarterback with Mississippi State, and then RJ Martinez, who lit it up in FCS. Right, so he has competition to where if he doesn't play well, you can now look at the receivers and say, "You got receivers. Time to pull the." We'll see. I do think Baylor pulls away. I would not be shocked if this starts similarly to last year, where Baylor maybe goes into halftime with like a 10, 14-ish point lead. They are playing against an offense and an offensive coordinator in Mac Leftwich, who is known for getting started pretty quickly. But I will say, as somebody who's seen those offenses not work, it's great when it's working, right? It's awesome. But those are some quick 3-and-outs if they're not working,
Yeah.
right? Those are some quick drives that could really tire out a defense really, really quickly. So, again, I think that line's right. I think I'm still going to pick Texas State to cover. But I think by fourth quarter, Baylor's pretty comfortable, and we're probably seeing some guys like R.J. Martinez or Sawyer Robertson in for just cleanup duty.
I would pick Texas State to cover too because it's hard to say this about week one, but I feel like this could be a bit of a look-ahead game for Baylor when they bring Utah in next week, and like they could maybe underestimate Texas State
and 20 hits a lot
and get punched in the mouth a little bit early before they pull away.
Sure.
I think for Malik Hornsby, this is one of the most important games of his career.
Oh, 1,000%.
Because one, he's going to be flip-flopping a little bit with TJ Finley. So one, they got to find out who the better quarterback is. But two, for Malik Hornsby, it's like, this is your chance to prove you can play quarterback in college.
Sure.
Because we've seen when it doesn't work at Arkansas when you get QB spied and there's someone on the defense that's as fast as you.
Yep.
Was that a fluke and Harold Perkins is just that, like, all caliber of an athlete? Right. I think so.
Right.
But can Baylor now run with you?
Sure.
Can another Big 12 team run with you like that? And then once they can run with you, can you beat them with your arm? And I don't know if that can happen right now.
No, that's fair. I think that's fair.
All right. Let's get into the wide zone.
Let's go. Wide zone. Hurry up.
Congrats, Mike Craven, because he's the one that came up with that, but he's not here for me to congratulate him. So congrats, Mike Craven. We love the wide zone. First game up on the wide zone, SMU hosting Louisiana Tech this Saturday at 11 a.m. You can watch it on ESPNU. SMU coming in as 20-point favorites. The over-under set at 66.5. La Tech, they barely won last week.
They were down
barely won against FIU.
They were down 17-3.
Yeah, it was that was a tough comeback for them. I don't know how I feel about La Tech. I do know how I feel about SMU, and I'm taking SMU.
I also don't know how I feel about La Tech, but I know how I feel about FIU.
Correct.
I do not think FIU
there you
is
go.
very good.
Yeah.
Quick trivia question. Anybody know who La Tech starting quarterback is?
Hank Bachmeier.
Oh, good one. Yeah,
I did my homework. Come on now.
Boise State starter who transferred in the middle of the year. Hank Bachmeier. I thought that was actually a pretty good get for Sonny Cumbie there.
Yeah.
This should be a flex game for SMU.
Yes.
They should be able to show out in this game because speaking of teams with high expectations, let's put Texas right here up top, right? I honestly think there's an argument that SMU is number 2, right? Because you can say A&M has a lot of – but that's more pressure in terms of, like, you better get it done.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, I'm excited to see SMU.
Yeah. A&M's not, like, excitement right now. A&M is like, you
like,
better be good.
What's the phrase? There's some lemon booty in College Station right now. There's some nervousness going on there. SMU is just like, I'm excited to see what they could really be this year.
Yeah.
And this is the type of game, a team that struggled against FIU. Again, I will reemphasize that. At home, insane hype. You should be the odds-on, or at least one of the odds-on favorites to win the American Conference. I think they blow this spread out. There's -20 SMU. I think they blow this out.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts because the Preston Stone era is starting at SMU.
So excited for this.
I'm very excited as well. I've been to fall camp, and he looks very good. He's basically the guy who, they had a very good quarterback in Tanner Mordecai last year, and he had to transfer to Wisconsin because he's like, dude, Preston Stone's
going to
play.
That's what's so shocking is that Tanner Mordecai's been the starter for, 2 years now?
Yeah.
Yep.
And Preston Stone beats him out to where he's got to go way up north. That's incredible.
Also, FIU ran for 200 yards and 5.9 yards a carry against La Tech, now you got to face Tyler Levine, Jalen Knighton, LJ Johnson, Kamar Wheaton, four-headed monster. And, Velton Gardner, too. There's five guys back there who are better than anyone FIU has. So Preston Stone, it's the start of Preston Stone era, but they could run for 300 yards.
I was about to say, this is going to be again, I will say the thing I want to watch in this game, defense.
Yeah.
Can the defense make some plays, right? Can the defense make sure that La Tech has no room to breathe? Because that was the question mark last year, right? Was that this defense, they remade that defense. They brought in transfers from Miami, West Virginia, I believe, like Liberty. Like, there's transfers all over. So if they can really shut this down and have a really good showing defensively, then I really start to turn my attention to what's going on over there.
Yeah, agreed. All right, next game on the list, Rice. Hoot, hoot.
Hoot, hoot.
Taking on Texas at Texas. This Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on Fox. And Texas is coming in with a comfortable 35.5-point favorite. Yeah. And the over/under set at 58.5. Yeah. Carter, are you worried about this at all? And any chance that JT Daniels just comes in and lights him up?
That's
maybe.
Never happened. Never. JT, no offense, but this is the one game where Rice is probably like, dang, we got a quarterback that they know.
Yeah, literally.
Like every other game, they're like, yeah, we got JT Daniels, and now it's like, oh wait, they got film on this guy. Like Texas knows how to play.
Everybody's played against JT Daniels.
We've seen JT Daniels in 2018 when they lost 37-14. Yes. In 2018 when JT Daniels was a freshman, and then last year Texas was up like 38-7.
I was about to say,
like
there's one thing Texas knows, and it's how to beat JT Daniels.
I think JT Daniels could have a good game.
Sure.
Light them up to win? No. Cover the spread? What's the spread?
35.5.
I think Rice covers.
I was about to say that's a big spread. That's a big spread.
I think Rice covers, even if not because Texas pulls all their starters and JT Daniels goes berserk on the second team in the fourth quarter and backdoor covers.
Yeah.
I think, Rice, it's a team I'm excited for.
Yeah.
JT Daniels and Mike Bloomgren, I've talked about the 8-year recruitment of JT Daniels and how he likes this offense because it's multiple pro style and 2 and 3 play calls at the line of scrimmage. And this really plays in his wheelhouse as like a super intelligent quarterback.
Sure.
It's all fine and good. It's not going to happen.
I was about to say next week's the week to really start.
Next week's the start. Let's go out and get some practice in. Let's figure out where we are. Let's everyone stay healthy because you're not winning this game.
Right.
But maybe you'll cover.
Yeah. I would. I was trying to look at last year's schedule to see like how many times Texas like blew their spread out the water. One of them was, hey, you remember when they beat Oklahoma 49-0? That was awesome. That was one of them. But the other time was ULM 52-10 in the season opener. I think Rice is better than ULM, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that 42 points is going to be that necessarily, but a touchdown better, maybe a couple. I could see that. I'm going to go with Texas. I do think Rice can cover. I'm going to go with Texas because I think that they've heard all summer that you guys better get it done this year. Mm-hmm. And then I think they're going to come out and like swing for the fences, right? Yeah. They're going to come out and say, you know what, screw this. Because like the other thing is when they quote unquote pull their guys, we're just going to see Malik Murphy out there, right?
Yeah,
and I think Malik Murphy is going to be able to be like, cool, my time, because whether or not I'm here next year, I gotta have some tape, so we'll see. They got Bama next week. I don't think it's a look ahead for Texas because I think they're using this to look ahead to Bama. Right.
Yes,
they're very much going to be like, we can't wait to play Bama, so we're going to just pile drive Rice into the turf to be like, cool, we're ready. Let's go.
We might be sitting here next Wednesday and being like, is Texas going to go to the national championship? I
know it's 59-0. We're like, that was the greatest team I've ever seen.
Exactly. I think they're going to come in with all the positive momentum against Alabama, and then we're actually going to see what kind of team they are. But I think this is going to be like a Harlem Globetrotters game.
I was about to say,
basically for Texas. Yeah, the Generals are coming to town.
When you were going to steal Mike Bloomgren's wallet and like run around and like do like they're going to throw like water in his face. It's going to be confetti, and I'll just completely messing with him. Yeah.
Exactly. And I already know I'm going to have every friend I have from college just blowing up my phone.
Texas is back, baby!
How awesome they are. This is the year.
The Rice fan. What's the Krusty the Clown gif from the clip from The Simpsons where he's like, he's spitting the ball in his face. Take it. Watching the Globetrotters, just like, come on.
Jeez. All right.
Yeah, not much to watch here, but we'll look again, another flex game potentially.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to my home turf now.
Ooh.
Cal.
Intrigue.
Traveling to Denton at North Texas this Saturday at 3 p.m. You can watch it on ESPNU. No more stadium. How about that?
No more stadium.
Cal coming in as 7-point favorites. The over/under is set at 54. I don't agree with that.
It's a small spread because Cal's hasn't been impressive.
And also because the vibes at Cal, all-time low.
Vibes are not great at Cal.
It's the same story with TCU in Colorado. It's not hot in Cal. They're practicing in very nice weather right now, and North Texas is used to practicing in 106-degree weather. So are they going to be able to keep up with, are are they going to have their guys out there dying all over the field?
And they're going to be playing in what I love to call the TCU Stadium.
The TCU Stadium.
AKA DATCU Stadium.
I'm more of a DATQ guy.
I like the TCU Stadium because it says the TCU Stadium. Anyway, they're playing in their newly named stadium in Denton. So here's my thing. I don't know what to think of Cal because last year they stunk. They bring in Jake Spavital, who I like. I don't know if he's going to fix the offense, which is a problem. He could, because again, the last time we've seen him coach an offense when he was playing with Texas State players, and I don't know if like you give him Cal players, things are better. But I also don't know what kind of talent Cal has.
Yeah, how much better are the
I was
Cal
about
players?
to say, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
If looking at their record, it probably looks like Texas State playing a Power 5 schedule. I don't know, but it's not that bad. It's not going to be that awful, but I think that's why it's a 7 right now. It's because, like, I think, one, that's optimism to Eric Morris, saying, like, they have a new coach. They were a good team last year that wanted to be better, right? And I think that's a little bit of a positive to UNT. We now know Stone Earl will be starting. That's going to be another interesting mark. I believe, Carter, you have the story on that coming soon. I'll just plug that right now. By the time you're listening to this, it'll probably be dropping on Tech Football today. Chandler Rogers will apparently play, according to Coach Morris. I can see why the spread is going to be – I think Cal will cover because I think it'll be a little bit more. But -7 does not shock me based on the question marks around Cal and kind of I'd say, pretty good optimism around UNT.
I'm not worried about UNT's offense being able to put up points whether or not it's Stone Earl or Chandler Rogers. What I'm really concerned about is their defense because a lot's been made about the 3-3-5 and how innovative that is and – the wide receivers at UNT and Eric Morris, they hate going up against it because it does kind of stink to go up against 3 high safeties. But what you don't see in practice is they are extremely thin at linebacker. Like if you're in a 3-3-5, those linebackers need to be rangy and they need to be some of the best players on the defense. And
they're probably safeties in like the early 2000s.
And you lose Katie Davis, who had 200 tackles last year, and Larry Nixon, who went to Auburn.
Sure.
And then Kevin Wood is their best returning guy, but he's been injured like all of fall camp, and he's like playing right now, but Morris wouldn't even commit to him playing on Saturday. He's kind of like going through the motions in practice because that's all he can do right now. And then the defensive line, what worries me about this 3-3-5 as well is I don't know if they have the personnel along the defensive front for this to work seamlessly.
Gotta have some hogs on a
because they've
line.
got 2 guys who are 300 pounds and exactly 300 pounds.
Yeah.
Everyone else is 275.
Sure.
The guys on the edge are 255. That's not big enough, in my opinion, to run the 3-3-5 effectively.
Sure, I get that. My biggest worry is going to be I think he's talented, but I do wonder about Mason Richards. He's a small defensive lineman for the 3-3-5, right? I believe he was standing up last year, but they moved him down to defensive line for the. I think he's talented. I think he's going to be a little bit outmatched in this game in particular. I think when he maybe plays more AAC teams, more teams around like Rice and then things like that, I think he'll be better and he'll finish the year as one of their best players on defense. I think there's a reason why Eric Morris called him probably their most talented player, right? I do worry about him playing up a size. He was a linebacker a year ago, right? That's a very different position than a down 3-3-5 lineman. I believe he's on the end, right, if I'm not mistaken.
He is, yeah. But he's going to be getting a lot of double teams too, probably because
and so
3 down linemen.
Right, exactly. So that is going to be an issue. I'm very curious about Sam Jackson, the 5th for Cal, former TCU quarterback, transfers to Cal, was named their starter. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think about him because he never played at TCU, right? But Cal. If I'm not mistaken, Cal was also in for Chandler Rogers this offseason. I don't know if it was when UNT probably made a harder push or whatever, but he took an official visit to Cal. And UNT, I believe, came in the picture. I can't remember if it was at the same time. Regardless, Cal then made Sam Jackson their target. I'm curious what they saw in him because now you have, again, a new offense. Jake Spavital is an air raid disciple similar to Dana Holgerson. What do they see with him running that offense that they like more, whether it was more than Chandler Rogers or whoever they were targeting? I don't know what to expect. And so I think the question marks on defense for UNT is really good because, there's some personnel issues that need to be worked out for that 3-3-5 to work, depth-wise as well. And then offensively, look, Cal on defense will always be, I think, average because Justin Wilcox's a defensive guy. Offensively, we'll see.
I have nothing to add about Sam Jackson. I have no idea what he's
Exactly.
Like.
No, I know he's the starting
being
quarterback.
honest.
And I know he was a pretty highly touted.
I'm not gonna sit here and filibuster.
That was it.
Act like I know Sam.
Look
Jackson.
up his stats.
Yeah.
They don't know much about him either.
No, they.
So.
That's funny. All right, let's move on. New Mexico playing at Texas A&M this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN. Texas A&M coming in as 38-point favorites. The over/under set at 49.
I am going under on this one only because it's not what A&M does.
No,
They don't blow teams out.
They don't.
Like, even when they win, like I think last year they beat Sam Houston 38-0 or 31-0, sorry. They don't blow teams out. I think it'll be a very boring, controlled game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's
not going to be risky or anything.
I was about to say,
they're going to keep it controlled.
Yeah, like 38's a lot. I can't remember the last time they beat a team by 30. I'm looking right now.
All
And
right.
I have not seen it.
2022, they lost to Appalachian State 17-14 in week 2.
Right.
2021, they beat a bad Colorado team 10-7 in week 2. 2020, they started 1-2, 2-1, but they got smoked by Bama and beat Vanderbilt by 5.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M, historically, I know Jimbo Fisher does not start the season very hot. It's kind of
2019. They beat Lamar 62-3. That was the last time they won by like 30 more points.
it's kind of like the opposite of Kevin Sumlin's teams, where they would always start 5-0,
And then you get to October
and then have a
just lose.
funeral
Yeah.
against Bama, and then like stop playing the rest of the year.
Basically.
I think, look, my Aggies fans here, we got to hold strong after this game, okay?
Yes. No, I agree.
Because
I agree.
it's going to be close. All right, it's going to be dicey, and there's going to be a lot of weird media reports after, like the Jimbo Fisher, Bob Petrino marriage isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just beat New Mexico 21-10. It's okay. It's week 1. It's weird. Don't worry about it. Got to hold strong.
You're not going to show your best. You're not going to show all your cards week 1 either.
It's going to be a good season. It's going to be a good season. This game's going to be super boring.
I will say, I think I'm the opposite. I do think it's going to be boring. Don't get me wrong. I think it's going to be boring or in the sense that they're never going to be in danger of losing this.
No.
It's going to be that game where they're going to be up 7-0. It's going to be halftime, and New Mexico State has like 4 yards. And it's going to be like, oh, they haven't crossed half field yet. They're not worried. It's like, oh, they're a big play away. It's like they're not doing it. Like, it's just going to be one of those games that kind of vintage Nick Saban games where they just sit on a game and they're not really trying to flex numbers. They're just trying to get out of there and be like, yeah, cool, we did what we needed to do. You know, Connor Wigman, I think, will look pretty good. But, yeah, they're just 21-10 sounds right. Maybe 28-10. They just don't blow teams out. Like, they just – I don't know. They don't. So, don't worry, Aggie fans. I think you'll be fine, too. Next week's the real litmus test at Miami. That's, I think, will be actually a better showcase, and I think you'll come out pretty comfortable in that one. I wouldn't be surprised if they win that, not by more, but like if they just like if you come away feeling better about your team against than you do this week.
I like that too.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Texas Tech playing at Wyoming this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. You can watch it on CBS. And Texas Tech coming in as 14.5-point favorites. The over/under set at 50.5.
Speaking of teams that may have a little bit of look ahead in their mind.
Yeah, and you do not want to be looking ahead to Oregon when you're in Laramie, Wyoming.
I was going to say.
Because you can find yourself in the Thunderdome really fast.
Craig Bull, baby, bull ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's going to be very interesting. Like you mentioned, Tech's had a lot of hype this offseason, rightfully so. We think that everything's going good in Lubbock. They look really good. They didn't lose anybody. I mean, they lost Tyree Wilson, obviously, but nothing that you're really concerned about, right? Now it's time to do it.
Yeah.
Now that's basically what it is now. Now it's time to put that to the field, and Wyoming's not exactly, I don't want to say like it's I don't want to call it the Thunderdome necessarily, but it is a different environment than you're used to playing into, right?
Dun, dun, dun.
Nobody walks into Laramie with a dub.
I'm interested to see what Taj Brooks like as the sole running back.
Yes.
That's number one.
Yeah.
I'm interested in what Tyler Shuck looks like. You know, he had a lot of injuries last year, and he looked great at the in the Texas Bowl. But after this whole offseason, you know, with Kitley, and they made him the guy after spring ball when it could have dragged into fall camp with Baron Morton and Tyler Shuck. I'm interested to see what he looks like. The defense, I think, is something that's been a little bit lost in the shuffle and all this Texas Tech hype. And the fact of the matter was the secondary wasn't all that great last year.
Right.
So how do they look against Wyoming, a team that, look, I think Wyoming is a perfect test to play because it's like you can not play your best and get a little scared, but you're going to win the game probably.
Sure.
It's not like this team that are going to go and lose to Wyoming, but I think Wyoming will give them a game. And
I mean, Craig Bowles made them a reliable bowl team, a Group of 5 bowl team, which is a good litmus test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they're solid at running the ball. I believe Parker, a good friend, Stats of War on Twitter, put out his advanced stats graphics for the week, and they were 35th in the country in EPA per rush. They can run the ball, right? So that's a good test for that front seven for Texas Tech. I also want to see the offensive line for Texas Tech, who was god-awful last year.
Yeah.
Can they hold up against a team that doesn't have that great? If Wyoming's getting pressure, we have problems.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So if they're able to keep things protected for Tyler Shuck, which, by the way, could be the key to their season because everybody got hurt last year, and that was kind of a big reason why they were kind of up and down at times on offense. Tyler Shuck's healthy. Things look good, right? You can protect your quarterback, and we'll see where things go. So I think Tech covers, but I like this litmus test. I believe Wyoming's been 7-6 past 2 years. So.
I got Tech covering as well.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Incarnate Word traveling to play UTEP this Saturday at 8 p.m., and you can watch it on ESPN+. I don't got any numbers for you because Incarnate Word's an FCS opponent.
Yeah.
I'm a little,
I'm a little worried.
I'm a little concerned here for the Miners. After last
Listen,
week.
as an alumni of victim of UIW before.
Yes, correct. You can speak on this.
Look, I know Kilo is a new head coach for UIW, but he is well versed in the UIW kung fu arts of slapping some FBS teams around. Listen, go check it. By the way, if you don't know, UIW starting quarterback is Zach Calzada.
Woo!
That's Zach Calzada. A&M
Auburn, Texas A&M,
yeah,
everywhere.
A&M, Auburn, all that stuff. So they got a quarterback who has an arm and who knows that he's going to an offense that loves to throw the ball. And now Kilo takes over. Clint Kilo takes over, former wide receiver coach, now the head coach. He's going to be running basically the same stuff.
Yes.
I'm picking UTEP to win.
Okay.
But y'all better not let this get ahead of y'all. Y'all better not let this game get away from y'all. Because this team, I am very excited to see this Incarnate Word team. And I'm very excited to see Zach Calzada with the full confidence of an offseason and a team that's behind him and a coaching staff that's behind him to lead them forward. I'm going UTEP because I don't want to believe things are that bad yet. But they could absolutely be that bad.
Here are my thoughts on UTEP right now.
Sure.
1 versus Jacksonville State. Too many drives that went to midfield or passed with no points.
Yes.
Turnover on downs, the first drive, missed field goal, sack fumble.
It was very spring practice game from UTEP.
The running back situation, I like that they have multiple running backs, but I think Torrance Burgess is the best one, number 5. He was, I think, the most explosive by far. UTEP procedurally had some things that were worrying me. One, in the second quarter when they had to burn 2 timeouts back to back, and they got a delay of game penalty because they literally called a timeout, went and talked over their play,
and they called
lined back up and had to call another timeout, and they were like, "Wait, you can't do that. That's a penalty." Yeah, and it actually helped them because they ended up scoring, and they wouldn't have had a timeout later.
Yeah.
As far as the defense goes, I don't know how many plays I watched where Jacksonville State's running the play and UTEP's getting lined up.
Yeah.
Like they were just constantly shifting sides of the field. They were looking to the sidelines. They weren't ready to play. And then I also don't know how many times UTEP got beat by the halfback wheel pass because it was a lot.
Yeah.
I think UTEP wins, but not by much.
I was about to say, don't make us look stupid, please, because I don't want to believe things are that bad yet. That last week's game did make me really, 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 really nervous. The one piece of credit that I do want to give UTEP is that Jacksonville State was an excellent FCS program. Right, that was like one of the 9-10 wins. Like when they had 7 wins, it was a bad year for them. Right. So it wasn't them playing like a middling of the pack team coming up to FBS. It was them playing like an Appalachian State caliber going up to FBS. Regardless, shouldn't have lost last week. There were some issues there. That's what I'll give you. Please don't lose to Incarnate Word.
Also, resident weatherman here. It's very humid in Jacksonville State.
It is very humid
not
in Jacksonville.
Very humid
in El Paso.
It's not very humid in El Paso. So
I did see Jacksonville State had like giant fans on the sidelines, and they were just like, "Yeah, good luck, UTEP."
Yeah,
they did
and
not
UTEP's
fans
just
at all.
Oh! Baking in the sun. Like they flashed over to them, just like right in their face, which was awesome.
One more. Let's go.
Let's round it all out with the newest member of our weekly previews. Sam Houston traveling up to BYU this Saturday. Kickoff, stay up, folks. It's at 9:15 p.m. You can watch it on FS1. BYU coming in as 20-point favorites.
Sam Houston after
Over
dark.
under set, huh?
Sam Houston after dark.
Correct. Over under
Noted
is,
Party City.
46.5. No.
No.
Noted Party City.
Noted Party City, Huntsville, taking on Noted Party City,
BYU.
Provo, Utah, and BYU. So, quick off the top of your head, BYU starting quarterback.
Keaton Slovis.
There you go. Yes, Keaton Slovis on his 17th school in college. So,
Where was he at before?
he was at Pitt last year, and then he started at USC. Similarly, he's on the JT Daniels track of going to USC and then somewhere else,
Branching out.
wherever he decides to go. I believe Sam Houston. I don't know if they named Keaton Shoemaker, but he's more or less going to be the starter. They did name Keaton Shoemaker, so I would not be shocked if he plays. Keeler did say he wants to play one quarterback. I believe Ben Sorrells, the host of March of the Pod with Corey Hogue, he tweeted out that Keeler did say he wants to play one quarterback. Of course, they brought in Grant Gunnell from UNT, formerly of Memphis. Whether that means that he's going to stick with Keegan Shoemaker the whole time, or if he does make a switch, that it's permanent, right? If Grant Gunnell's named the starter, he's going to stick with him. Whatever. Regardless, I think this weekend we'll see just Keegan Shoemaker. He played last year. He's a captain. He was at Media Day, right? They've done a pretty good job of showing him that despite this transfer, here's our guy, right? So whether or not we're talking about this in a couple weeks, I don't know. But they seem to have faith in him going forward. It's going to be a big year for them. They redshirted a lot of dudes, Sam Houston, last year, because they said, this year we're playing FBS ball. We want you here for that. It's not an easy schedule. They go to BYU, host Air Force at Houston. Then they get, quote-unquote, rest against fellow program at Jacksonville State. Not an easy schedule to come into, but I think BYU covers.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think I come away from this optimistic about Sam Houston regardless.
I'm going to take a bit of an opposite approach. I think Sam Houston is going to be good this year. I think they're going to compete more than people expect, but I think they're going to get boat raced against BYU because of all those guys who redshirted.
Sure,
I mean,
that's fair. It's a year off football.
It's a year off football, and as we get, farther and farther along in the concussion protocol and of how everyone is so smart now about limiting head injuries, people aren't practicing like they used to.
That's fair.
So these guys who took a year off football, they haven't been live tackling near as much, and game speed is completely different.
That's a really good point.
Game speed is completely different from the practice speed. So, and you're playing a team against BYU who's now in the Big 12, and I don't think they're going to be ready to play at that game speed yet.
Yeah, 11-1, 10-3, 8-5 has been BYU's last couple seasons under Kalani Sitake. So, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But I do think I'll be optimistic about Sam Houston. But, yeah, their schedule does not do them any favors. No. So, yeah.
That'll do it.
That's it. All right.
Week 1
preview in the books. Remember, we do record Sunday mornings or early afternoons, depending on whenever everybody can get situated, because, of course, we're all over the state. So we will be back Sunday only on the podcast, not the video.
Won't be live.
It won't be live. So we'll be coming back with recaps of all of these. We'll see if we get Craven on or Carter on, will depend on schedule. But regardless, you'll hear from us again Sunday. And with that being said, we have interviewed 12 of the 13 FBS coaches. Thank you, Casey Keeler, for being officially a part of the FBS family with us, and Sam Houston. So we'll talk to you guys later. Go Rutgers, kicking off against...
Beat Northwestern,
baby, and we'll talk to you guys Sunday.